Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is Saturday, January the 13th, and I mean, it's Super Wild Card weekend. Are you guys excited out there? I'm pretty excited. I'm not going to lie. I'm especially excited because I do not reside in, well, about 90% of the country that's getting frigid cold air right now. It's actually a balmy 62 degrees and humid here in sunny Florida. But my co-host there is preparing to brave the cold up in Kansas City. And I hope this isn't the last episode that we do together because, quite frankly, if I went, I might not come back after all that.
Yeah, it's I don't really handle the cold pretty well, but for whatever reason, I think some of the other cold games I've been to at Arrowhead, it just seems if it's packed enough and I think as long as you're I guess prepared smartly, I think it kind of is a little warmer than what you maybe anticipate. So I think I went to a Titans game like a few years ago. It was like 1 degrees at kickoff. So it'll be a little bit worse this time, but I think as long as I'm just mentally prepared, I think I'll be hopefully okay.
Yeah, I'd stock up on those hand and feet warmers that you can just shove in your shoes and stuff like that. You know, just have some reserves that you can go through each and every quarter or something like that. You know, it's going to be something. But hey, you know what? It could make for a pretty classic moment. And look, for football fans, a snow and cold game is like that's what everyone wants.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've seen some people complain, but forget them. Who wants a dome in Buffalo? Like, come on, guys. Like get real. Like it's football. Whether it's part of the game, the elements. It factors in, and I think it's going to be great that we get two games like that, or at least it looks like we're going to be getting two games like that this weekend, and obviously Kansas City, and then obviously Buffalo as well. So, but before we kind of dive into some of those games, and of course, before we make our picks, which we do each and every week, obviously got some more coaching news. You and I spoke earlier this week about some of the B tier firings now that it turns out to be, because since then, both Pete Carroll, the oldest coach in the league, and Bill Belichick, the second oldest coach in the league, have now apparently moved on, and the Patriots have already actually moved on with the hiring of Gerard Mayo. I'm going to focus on the Patriots because obviously, I mean, it's Bill Belichick, and it's the six-time Super Bowl winning head coach. Uh, I I think it was a mistake to let him go, and I've been kind of saying that. And this is nothing against Gerard Mayo. Um, I was more against the hiring of Mike Vrabel, and I had said earlier in the week that I'd rather have a guy like Jim Harbaugh than Mike Vrabel, and quite frankly, I don't know. I might still feel that way about Gerard Mayo. I don't know how good of a coach he's going to be. The players love him. I get it. I understand that for sure. So that's a great sign. That's a great start. But for me, I found it a little odd that they decided to move on from Belichick and go with someone on staff who is essentially going to not obviously copy him, but provide a lot of the same perspective, having coached and played under Belichick for the last 13, 14 years. So it'll be interesting. Obviously a brand new, I mean, well, it's been kind of a new era in Patriots football since Tom Brady left, a era of mediocrity and awfulness. But I think they do have an opportunity to turn things around. And hey, you know what? If it means a different perspective, a different fresh take on all this, so be it. But ultimately, I do think it was a mistake by the Patriots to move on from Bill Belichick at this point. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of these playoff teams we end up talking about, especially this weekend, is looking at Bill Belichick as their new head coach going into next season. Because again, as short of the Chiefs and Andy Reid, pretty much every team would probably want a couple years of Bill Belichick based on what they've gotten right now. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. So at the end of the day, I think it was a mistake by the Patriots. I don't think it's going to be a devastating mistake because I think Gerard Mayo is a good coach. He's coached with the Patriots, but I think it was a little short sighted for them to move on at this point.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that It was an in-house candidate. Obviously, it seems like Robert Kraft was pretty high on Gerard Mayo for the last few seasons, but I'm really interested to see where Vrabel goes. I know, like you mentioned, not every Patriots fan maybe wanted Vrabel as the coach, but it is going to be, I guess, really interesting to see where his candidacy kind of lies in the next couple of weeks as probably one of the top options available. But I think with Mayo, what's really interesting is just kind of spent his whole professional career in New England. So like you said, not really maybe that big of a change philosophy wise, but I'm going to be interested, I think, to see how he works with whoever the new general manager is, and maybe just how having kind of more of just one person, and instead of just one person making all the decisions with the roster and the team, kind of seeing how that goes for this squad. And obviously, the offense is kind of the biggest question with the quarterback, but it just seems like a team that's kind of really kind of going to be able to rely on maybe some young pieces moving forward. And I think with Gerard Mayo, it seems like he's been able to connect to some of that Patriots roster. So even if it's not necessarily a different philosophy, I think it appears that a lot of Patriots players that'll be coming back, or at least pretty high on Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, and based on the fact that they already hired the coach, it tells me the GM's probably going to be a hire from within, someone that's already involved in the organization. So, again, not a lot of change from that perspective. However, if you depending on how much truth there is to some of the stuff that's been kind of filtering out, it seems as though Robert Kraft has taken more of a hand in personnel decisions and football decisions of late. And well, you can reach whatever conclusion you want from that, but it kind of tells me a little bit. And I think Patriots fans and some people that follow this team are kind of seeing that, yeah, some of this dysfunction, so to speak, may start with the ownership. And I'm not necessarily going to argue that point. But it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this next season. Obviously, Gerard Mayo is a defensive coach, so he's going to have a defensive philosophy. But who knows? Maybe he does add a different something the Patriots were lacking in terms of idea or whatever you want to call it. But whatever it is, I think the situation was kind of handled a little poorly. I think it was a little premature, in my opinion. But I also said they weren't going to let go of him, so I was wrong there. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, I'm wrong here. Hopefully, Gerard Mayo's a better or greater coach than Bill Belichick. I'd be happy with that. Why not? You have arguably the greatest coach of all time, and you replace him with the greatest coach of all time. Who knows? You never know what's going to happen. But anyways, it's been quite a coaching storyline this offseason. And if you consider Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, potentially some of these other coaches, there's going to be a nice list of free agents out there, so to speak, and there's going to be a lot of teams chomping at the bit because, as we've seen over the last couple of years, and pretty much every year we see it, there's not a lot of great coaches in this league. So yeah, there's going to
And
be a lot more movement.
yeah, and I think you can echo that to kind of these assistant coaches, everyone kind of,
Mhm.
trying to pick who the hot, new assistant, either offensive or defensive coordinator is going to be. There's just not that many that really stand out. So I think compared to what we had a couple weeks ago, there's a lot more intriguing options out there for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, and like I said, I mean, I think Bill Belichick's still going to coach, and
Yeah.
there's a couple. We're going to start shifting here to Super Wild Card Weekend and talking about these games, but there are a couple teams right now that I'm looking at that if things don't go well, you might want to keep an eye on them. And actually, I'll throw it out there: Dallas,
Yeah.
Buffalo, and people like Buffalo. What are you talking? If Buffalo loses somehow this game to Pittsburgh, I could see them moving on from Sean McDermott, especially if they know that a guy like Bill Belichick's waiting in the wings. And that could be a perfect situation because, well, maybe you don't necessarily look long term because, well, this Buffalo team has been kind of plateauing, so to
Mhm.
speak, for the last couple seasons. They reached a peak. They've kind of come back down a little bit. And quite frankly, Sean McDermott is I've never necessarily been too high on him. I mean, I think he got again. This is a great example of the young hot coach. Everyone's top of their list. He has a lot of equity to his first couple seasons, then it kind of dies off. And you're like, okay, he's a guy. He's a pretty good defensive coach. But you take a guy like Bill Belichick, I think that cleans up a lot of those issues for a team that has a lot of talent and has a really good quarterback. So, and like I said, the other team being Dallas, same story. Do you move on from Mike McCarthy if they fail, especially against Green Bay in the wild card round? That's what I'm saying. If those two teams lose this weekend in particular, I think they're trust me, it's going to be something you want to keep an eye on. And if he does go to Buffalo, you heard it here first. Just saying, just saying.
Yeah, there has been some reported I think stuff already this week. Kind of Belichick and Jerry Jones already kind of having a pretty good mutual relationship as well. It appears so. It's kind of crazy. Mike McCarthy got I think 12-5 or something like that, 3 straight seasons. But I think if they lose to Green Bay, I would not be surprised if they make a move there. I don't know if I've heard it as much with Belichick either, but Philadelphia's kind of been a weird one too,
Mhm.
with how the wheels have kind of fallen off. I don't know for sure if they'd move on from Sirianni, but I wouldn't be 100% certain that he's coming back necessarily if they lose down in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you have to consider the fact that this isn't just a normal free agent coach. So I think there is going to be a little bit different approach to it. Again, maybe Philadelphia wouldn't move on from Sirianni, but consider, maybe they're like, okay, maybe this guy can come, maybe Belichick can come in for a couple of years because that's the thing. I mean, Belichick's 72 years old. This isn't going to be a long-term thing. So to Terry's question about Atlanta, I don't necessarily like it. Everyone's talking about Atlanta and I don't see it. I don't see Atlanta as a team that's near contending. They don't have a quarterback. I think they don't have as many like the Patriots don't have a quarterback, but they have options with a high draft pick and a lot of money to spend. And quite frankly, I mean, they don't have as many issues as Atlanta does. So I don't see Atlanta as a necessarily a great option. Like I said, if he's going to coach again, it's going to be one of these playoff teams that are playing this weekend or next. And to me, I just don't see why, you want to go to a team, you want to pick the right destination that you can take that team over the top. And like I said, I look at Dallas, I look at Buffalo. I'm looking across in these, 2, 4, 6, 12 teams that are playing today or this weekend. 8 of them would be improved with Bill Belichick. Miami, I think. Uh, Houston remains is kind of incomplete, because D'Amico Ryan's first year, very, very good impression. Cleveland, obviously, you have what could be a 2-time coach of the year and a guy who's brought Cleveland to the playoffs twice. So I'll give him credit for that. But Buffalo, Green Bay, I think, Dallas, uh, Rams, whatever. Rams have a good coach out, so they want to move on. Detroit loves uh, 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 what's his
Campbell.
face up there? Yeah, Campbell. But Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, both of those teams. All I guess
Yeah,
that would be something that would be kind of funny if he went to Tampa Bay, but that I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like so for a lot of these teams, I there's potential that if things go terribly for them this weekend, you could see a playoff team get rid of their head coach. And like I said, I think that would be a really good destination. And primarily, like I said, Dallas, Buffalo kind of stick out as the obvious most obvious destinations or whatever. And who knows? And like I said, I know maybe some Dolphins fans are upset because I mentioned Miami, but quite frankly, I don't have a good beat on Mike McDaniel. Great offensive strategist, whatever you want to call him. As an overall head coach, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's your opinion? Like, how do you see him? Is he? I mean, it might just be incomplete right now. Maybe we don't know enough about him as a head coach.
Yeah, I would say it's more incomplete. I mean, obviously the big sticking point with Miami the last couple of years, not able to really beat many teams that have a winning record. So I think there's kind of something where obviously great offensive designer. He was kind of reported to kind of be the one that was designing all these kind of creative run games, and obviously this outside zone, getting the blockers out in space. So I think it kind of remains to be seen how he kind of leads the team in big moments. But I don't think there's really a clear way, one way or the other, to really judge him yet.
Yeah, and part of that is too, and we go through this with players, coaches. There's a lot of hype early, and then sometimes you really have to kind of take a step back or two before you kind of fall into an appropriate zone, I guess, when it comes to talking about certain coaches and players. So it's like unfairly, I think everyone was, oh, this is the next big thing type of deal, and quite often that hype doesn't, and that's not Mike McDaniel's problem. It's just how things are covered. But um, more often than not, they don't, players and these coaches aren't living up to the hype because the hype is outrageously over the top. So yeah, it remains to be seen. And like I said, I mean, the creativeness wise, no doubt about it. It's fun to watch. Got to have some good players though. You're not doing what you do without Tyreek Hill
Yeah.
primarily, and then of course everyone else that's involved. So, anyways, let's get to our picks and talking about these games because I do think this has the potential. I'm looking at these matchups. There's very few that look, if any at all, that look that like they're going to be outmatched or just really just a bad matchup. I mean, I could honestly make a case for every single one of these teams winning this weekend. And
Yeah.
and that's not, you can't often say that. And even going into the playoffs, especially with this expanded playoff seeding with those extra teams. But considering the weather in Kansas City, I think that certainly evens the playing field quite a bit. I think that maybe the biggest mismatch might be Buffalo and Pittsburgh, but again, the weather is going to be a factor. And look, Buffalo is capable of playing down to their opponents and just not showing up. So I wouldn't write off Pittsburgh by any means. So again, it should be a pretty good weekend in my opinion. And look, I think Dallas and Green Bay, forget about Mike McCarthy, that whole storyline. But I think that's a very intriguing matchup because Green Bay could. I don't know. It's hard for me to pinpoint what Green Bay. I think they're a very good team. Are they going to be able to go on the road and beat Dallas, who plays well at home? I don't know, but I don't know if it would shock me if they did win, though. Despite how good Dallas is or how good people think Dallas is, I don't know. But so again, a lot of intrigue this weekend. So let's see where we're kind of landing on this, and we're going to start with Cleveland at Houston. Fascinating right off the bat because I think Houston has been a great story this year. D'Amico Ryans, and perhaps this is a good omen for the Patriots. But D'Amico Ryans has had a great first season as a head coach. Obviously, it helps a lot when you have a guy like CJ Stroud and you draft the quarterback that's going to, elevate your team. Now, much like I said, let's see now at this point, can CJ Stroud take his game to the next level and then continue to do that season after season? And that's when we can determine how great he really is. But right now, he's been playing well. The problem is, though, I think Cleveland's defense is really, really good. And Joe Flacco is, as crazy as it is, has been the best quarterback for this team, quarterback number 4. And yeah, I think I'm going to go with Cleveland. Now, if Houston, see now I'm starting to waffle a little bit. No, I'm sticking with my conviction. I'm going with Cleveland in this one. As much as I'd like to see Houston keep this going, I love the story. I love the run to the division, all that stuff. But I think it ends this year. However, if you're Houston, you can walk away from this, I think, feeling pretty good about the future. But I do like Cleveland to win this playoff game.
Yeah, this game is really fascinating. I kind of wish both teams could win, similar to the Lions and Rams matchup that we'll get into down the line. But yeah, it's fascinating with the Flacco thing, basically coming off the street. It's hilarious how many quarterbacks we see every week kind of play scared, and this guy just lets it rip, makes it look so easy. The ball's still kind of popping through guys' hands when they make the catch. So it's just like, he's never missed a beat. I think he has a chance to pass Tom Brady, I believe, for most road playoff wins if he comes through today. So It is going to be one of those things that I think Joe Flacco is going to kind of manage the game pretty well. And you kind of mentioned the Cleveland defense, and I was kind of originally going to go with Flacco because just this story's been incredible, and I would love to see him get a chance to knock off his old team in Baltimore if it does happen. But I think there's just something about C.J. Stroud. Obviously, kind of keeps building these chips on his shoulder with some people doubting them. Last week we saw some of that, and obviously he doesn't really kind of respond to it necessarily in a cocky way. He's really poised. So really love watching him play. I think there's just something about Stroud in this offense. Starting off with kind of some simple completions, but then able to hit on these deep shots that I really like. So I'm going to go with Houston here.
Yeah, look, I mean, I would not be upset about that, and I can't make a good argument against it. Like I said, I think this is going to be a really really good matchup and something that both of these teams are really going to kind of build off of. And yeah, imagine that Joe Flacco, Chris Rucker, Joe Flacco taking the the Browns and winning a Super Bowl. That would be quite something. Miami at Kansas City. Now I said it before. I think the weather here is going to play a significant role in this game because had it been just normal, not frigid -20 degrees or all that stuff with the wind, I'm not too concerned. But given the strengths of these two teams, and both have a pretty decent, pretty strong run game. Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs, and obviously Mostert and A Chain for the Dolphins. I think this favors the Dolphins. If things are going to be, the weather's going to be as bad as it seems. I think you look at both sides and you feel like, okay, then it's probably going to be a running, heavy game. You look at Kansas City, who's had their ups and downs and struggles all season moving the ball through the air. Obviously, the receivers aren't dynamic enough to run this type of offense. So I look at it and I say, well, if say the running game's a wash, Tyreek Hill and the short passing game for the Dolphins might ultimately take over because I just don't see a lot of big plays in this game with the cold. And I think that's a problem for Kansas City because I think Kansas City would handle that a little bit better than the Dolphins in this playoff game. But so at the end of the day, I may look foolish, but I think the Dolphins are going to win this game. But I don't have any faith in them moving forward. I just think that the circumstances and just their particular strengths and some of the Chiefs' weaknesses, I think it's going to. It just feels like that might be that thing. So I hope not, because for your sake, I don't want you to go there to the game and freeze your ass off and have them lose. But I do think the Dolphins are going to win this game.
Yeah, it's obviously given the circumstances of the offense this season. I don't think going into the playoffs, I would really be surprised with any result for the Chiefs. They could have a first round playoff exit, or they could somehow still reach the AFC
Right.
Championship game. I do think that when you look at kind of these defenses, the injuries with Miami is something
Mhm.
where I think the Chiefs could kind of take advantage. No Andrew Van Ginkel, obviously. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips also out. So I'm intrigued to see how the offensive tackles play. Wanya Morris, rookie for Kansas City, will be out with the concussion, so Donovan Smith is back in. Jawan Taylor, I think he's kind of found his footing a little bit late this season, but still always kind of have those hesitant question marks about those two right now. So those battles between those kind of backup defensive ends and those offensive tackles, I think, are going to be fascinating. But in the end, I think the Chiefs' defense is the best probably unit in this game. I think with the weather involved, so I think that's why I have to go with Kansas City in this one. And I think why the Chiefs' defense could be helped also is just it may take only like 17 to 20 points in this weather potentially to
Right.
win this game. So I could be wrong on how many points are scored, but I'm going to go with Kansas City with that defense.
Yeah, and again, it just kind of speaks to how this weekend could potentially be fantastic because I can't argue against that. Obviously I picked the Dolphins, but at the same time, it's like the defense. I agree with you. The Chiefs' defense is the best unit on the field of either team and all that. I do think that again the injuries are hurting Miami, but the weather does help that.
Mhm.
it evens the field. Like I said, you take the weather factor into account. I think it does make up for some of those deficiencies because again, it just sometimes depending if it's slippery out there, if it's wet, if it's I mean just you're affected by the cold, it's going to be an issue creating those advantages that maybe normally you would have. So um, yeah, it'll be fun. Hopefully it's not sloppy. You want to see like a really fun snow game. Maybe watch it's going to be like 70 to 65 and we're going to be sitting here looking foolish talking about, oh yeah, it's going to be a run game and low scoring, all that stuff. So all right, next, Buffalo hosting Pittsburgh. And again, a lot of the same things we just talked about. Weather can be a factor in this one, but mostly it's Buffalo's inconsistencies. Like I think they've been like Kansas City's been consistent. They just haven't had the same offensive firepower as in years past. So
Mhm.
I'm not looking at Kansas City as a team that swings on a pendulum. I think they're pretty consistent. They just haven't been as good as their Super Bowl champion winning years, and that's fine. I mean, you can't maintain that every single year. Buffalo, I think, is just more up and down, up and down. They could look great for one half. Josh Allen could have a great drive and then make two boneheaded mistakes in the subsequent drive. So again, I think it just all those factors play into it. I think Buffalo is going to win this game ultimately because I think Pittsburgh's a lesser opponent than Miami. Let's put it that way. If you're going to compare it to Kansas City, but there was a moment where I think I originally was going to pick Pittsburgh for the upset, and then I went back and forth. So again, this is one of those games where it's like I would not be surprised by whatever happens in this, and I'm just hoping we get a fun snow game, and it's one of those classic NFL backdrops whenever we see highlights. So give me Buffalo in this one, but I am not confident in this.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if Pittsburgh kind of kept this close and low scoring. I think they've been running the football pretty well, but at the same time, I think something that has helped the Bills is their ability to kind of run the football late this season since Joe Brady's kind of become the offensive coordinator. You've seen James Cook get going. They're kind of relying on Josh Allen's legs. I would say a little bit more. I think a little bit more instinctively. Certain areas in the red zone, but also on money downs when you absolutely need it. So I think they're just kind of using a lot more concise game plan that kind of fits the strengths of this team. No Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs has kind of been bottled up, but I think in the end, Bill's offense is just playing too good right now for Pittsburgh to kind of overcome that with Mason Rudolph. So I'm going to go with the Bills, but still think it might be closer than what some people might think.
Yeah, like I said, Buffalo's always good for making it interesting against some of these lesser opponents. But anyways, Dallas hosting Green Bay. Um, I like Dallas in this one. I again, I don't think this is going to be a blowout. So I know I know Chris looks like he predicted Cowboys by 17. I don't think that's going to be the case. Although they always get these big spreads. I think it's like plus 10 right now, or at least when I made our picks here earlier this morning. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Green Bay's been playing too good of football, and I think they have something in Jordan Love. Um, it's a big moment for him, first playoff start, and I think it's much much like for the history of this Packers run with Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of been, well, let's see what happens until we get to the playoffs. What's going to happen in the playoffs? So there's a lot of pressure on Jordan Love here. I think he's going to play well today. I just don't think it's going to be good enough. I do like Dallas in this one, but certainly not by 10 points or double digits. I think it'll be a closer game than that.
Yeah, I do think the pressure on Mike McCarthy in Dallas is going to be kind of too much for them to really run away with this one. And it's kind of weird because Dallas at home on turf, the winning streaks there, the offense is better there. Green Bay's defense not really posing much of a threat most of the time, but I think there's just something about this Packers team that the way they finished the season, I think they're going to make this kind of a gritty, grindy game. Didn't really realize this till a couple of days ago. Top two quarterbacks in passing touchdowns this season. So Jordan Love certainly, I think, has exceeded what probably most people expected of him. I'm always kind of just impressed how effortless some throws look down the field for him with his strength. So I think he'll have a good game, and obviously these weapons full of first and second year guys have really taken off for Green Bay. I just think Cowboys are kind of primed this year to kind of at least make a little bit more of a threat than what maybe they've done in the last couple of seasons. So I got to go with Dallas here, but do think it'll be a really good game.
All right. Next, we have the Rams, excuse me, heading to Detroit. Obviously, this is the Matt Stafford game, and well, I mean, to a lesser degree, I guess Jared Goff too, but no one's talking about Jared Goff. Everyone's talking about Matt Stafford. I again, I went back and forth with this one. I honestly did not know right off the bat. Normally, I can kind of just say, yeah, no, this team's going to win. This team's going to win. Um, I went with Detroit. You know, they're at home. I do think they're a little bit better than the Rams, but again, would it shock me if the Rams and Matt Stafford, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, goes in and beats Detroit, a team that hasn't even sniffed a Super Bowl or a championship game in 50 plus years? Yeah, it would not shock me, and quite frankly, maybe that's even expected by some because again, the Rams have they've played some pretty good football here down the stretch. Matt Stafford's been pretty good, and Detroit, they have a great offense, and sometimes they play some puzzling football. And you just hope if you're a Lions fan that doesn't show up today because I think if they show up and play their game, I think they'll win, and that's why ultimately I'm picking the Lions. But much like these other games, I would not be shocked at the opposite result at all.
Yeah, I do think this game will live up to the hype. I think that a lot of people are expecting for the points in the shootout. It is kind of fascinating what Raheem Morris has done with this Rams defense. A lot of young pieces around Aaron Donald. He's found a way to kind of get after the quarterback and create pressure. But I think Detroit, this is just going to be one of those games. I think their offense isn't going to let up. They've been able to run the football pretty well. Jameer Gibbs has exploded recently, but they still have David Montgomery as well. So even though the passing game is kind of what maybe generates the headlines the most, they've been pretty balanced, lighting it up stat wise in both areas. So I just kind of expect Detroit maybe to come through more maybe on scoring opportunities. And Stafford, as much as I like him, he's always kind of prone to some of these weird turnovers that I think we could see late in this game. So I got to go with Detroit as well, and I just hope it lives up to the hype.
Yeah, definitely. If there's a 1.5 over under with turnovers from Matt Stafford, I would probably take the over. I that's ultimately what I think is going to come down to because much, again, kind of like Josh Allen, and we saw it the last couple of weeks. It's not so much necessarily the turnovers, but it's the timing of them at
Yeah.
throwing in red zone turnovers in particular are been or at least have been in the microscope under the microscope the last couple of weeks. So. But yeah, it should be. I think it will live up to the hype, though. I think it's going to be a high scoring game too. Inside, great weather. Well, obviously the Detroit offense is great. The Rams offense has the potential to put up a lot of points anytime they want. So, anyways, Philadelphia at Tampa Bay. This is probably going to be the worst game of the weekend. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think
let's be honest. Like but the sad thing is I almost picked Tampa Bay in this one, but I kind of have an agenda to push, so I decided to against that. But no, seriously, Philadelphia just has not been playing well for the better part of 2 months now, and they're only or one one of their wins coming against the Giants, they almost lost. So it's been a struggle for this Eagles team. And when we were talking about potential coaching openings, who knows what's going to happen if Philadelphia lays an egg here. Um, I don't think even as bad as they play, I don't think they're going to lose to Tampa Bay. But then again, this Philadelphia team secondary is not good, and if Mike Evans has a game, we may be watching Philadelphia, head home with their season over. I mean, that is not a shock to me. And quite frankly, like I said, I almost did pick the Buccaneers in this one. Ultimately, I think the Eagles are going to squeak this one out, but I don't know. It's not going to fill me or I'm sure Eagles fans with any sort of confidence in this team moving forward because I think we've seen who the Eagles have been the last 2 months. I don't think that's changing overnight. So I'll take the Eagles, but this is probably their last win of the season.
Yeah, I decided to go Buccaneers here. Like you said, probably the least exciting game. I don't really think we'll see maybe a lot of explosive plays unless Philadelphia really just can't realize where any Tampa Bay receivers are going. But I just don't really expect a lot of spectacular plays, a lot of really sustained drives in this one. I just think the biggest defense or biggest difference is going to be the Eagles' defense in this one. You know, Jalen Hurts, that finger injury. It's going to be interesting to see how he looks throwing the ball. And I think looks like AJ Brown was just ruled out a couple minutes ago when we were recording this as well. So I
Oh
just
wow,
think.
yeah.
I don't know. It feels weird to kind of go with Tampa just based on maybe the sum of their parts, but I think even just as much experience as Philadelphia has in some areas, I just think this is kind of not their year, and I just think it's going to end quickly with the first round playoff exit.
Yeah, I mean, well, I almost honestly, I might actually just flip my pick right now. I'm serious. I mean, no AJ Brown out there. I mean, this team has look. I don't think things are going well necessarily behind the scenes with this team. We've
Yeah,
heard a lot of little rumblings of some tension or whatever. I think didn't AJ Brown like delete like stuff off his Instagram. I know
yeah.
that's that's
So
that's that's what these athletes do now to send a message is go to social media. So again, this is it's not that they're just losing games. It's things are getting a little not so fun in the city of brotherly love. So yeah, you know what? I'm with you. I'm gonna flip my pick there. No AJ Brown, the finger injury, the secondary, and look, I mean the this is what drives me crazy about last season with the Buccaneers because they couldn't create turnovers for the life of them.
yeah,
They're doing it now, and you have potentially the best safety in the NFL or one of the best safeties in Antoine Winfield Jr. patrolling back there. So I think that's going to make life difficult. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Buccaneers. I'm with you on that one. So that's a first. A little switch on the fly. I'm gonna have to go in and change these graphics, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just leave it as the Eagles. So if Tampa does lose, I can say, oh no, I actually picked the Eagles. That's what I did. But no, this is my official pick on here. I'm gonna go with the Buccaneers, and I think yeah, I like how you changed my mind there, Braden, and the injury helped too. So, anyways, that's going to do it for us here today. Obviously, enjoy the games, folks. Hopefully, they're going to be as good as we kind of hyped them up to be. If not, well, hopefully next week will be better. But no, we will be back next week to break down divisional round weekend, and we're going to really get into it as Baltimore and San Francisco get back into the mix after the bye. So, thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great weekend, Braden. Stay warm for I mean, hopefully, or relatively warm, whatever you got to do, 6, 7 blankets, Under Armour, ski mask, whatever you got to do. You can never look too ridiculous out in the snow. And just remember that you'll feel a lot better because of it. So anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in and have a great weekend. Enjoy Super Wild Card.